right, while Olaf brings up the draft report for adoption, Sean, I'll pass to you.
Okay, well, our normal process for this is that he'll put the report up and we'll scroll through it paragraph by paragraph. And if people have any comments they want to make along the way, we can deal with them then. And then decide on discussion items if to edit things or move them to a discussion afterwards. Guess we could open and close the management supporting information part of the agenda with that item.
So just with the report, there are currently 14 recommendations and 1 request for action. And so just as we get to each of those, if you could just review, just confirm the intention, whether it's for the commission or for the secretariat. Navigation. Start at 1 and off the video.
Okay, so I'll just call it paragraphs and you scroll through them. We'll just start at the top. Very top. Make sure these details are correct. Okay, so paragraph 1 and 2. 3. No, that's 4. 5. 6. 7 and 8. Up to the meat, so 9. And Marie, you might just want to confirm this is what you intended to say. I think we went.
It's not quite for 9A, she says.
Go ahead, Anne Marie. We can hear you now.
Okay, great, thanks. For 9A, it's they know that there are implications. What they are more interested in is because this is the way that they intend to use move forward. What ways to make the parts of the management strategy evaluation, so either the model itself or the objectives, how to make those more robust to the way, to the intent of use, if that makes sense.
Okay. That more accurate?
I think so. Thank you.
9B.
Yep, looks good. Thank you.
Okay. Move on. Okay, 11 and 12. Standard stuff, so. Scroll down a bit. And 15 was some of the discussion we had later in the day yesterday that came under, it's after Bosch's presentation, but if you get able to go up here, search planning section. And it kind of even gets back to what Anne Marie's bullet 9A was getting at, was comment on some of the long-term strategies, ways of dealing with funding with this in science. So these are related. Okay. Along 16, 17.
And this is from our discussion about the impacts being bigger potentially at the region.
You know, I think it's fine if it's here. It could also go in this design section. Because really the stock distribution isn't an assessment output per se, it's related management information, but the assessment itself isn't spatial, so it doesn't use.
Yeah, it's just that this came out of your presentation.
Yeah.
How the different FIS, CVs and bias scenarios.
Mhm.
I think we have a similar comment.
Yeah. This is good.
In the fifth section.
This is good.
So maybe what we could change recommended to a noted there. Just say noted the impact.
I don't think it's critical either way. We get the message. In this case, recommended, I think, would direct the commission to be aware that there are important implications for stock distribution, and that we would be providing information to help them better understand that. So it's good.
So 19 leads to 20, so 19 and 20. Was our only request?
Just the one.
And we don't have to, it doesn't have to be specified here, but the assumption would be I'd be presenting that back to you in June. Would be part of this year's stock assessment.
Right.
Yep.
It's probably enough of a request. I mean, it's going to be a fair amount of work.
I don't think it's critical, but you could note, you could have a paragraph noting that we talked through the list of development ideas for the 2025 full stock assessment, and it seems like a good starting point or something. you'll get to see how those play out in June, and then we'll have a full iteration before the actual assessment's done. So if there are things that we need to do more or less of, we can do more of that next year.
What do you want to say? Presentation of plan work. Assessment. Further interest.
2025 full stock assessment, just so that we keep reminding people that this is going to be another full analysis.
And then maybe a comma after assessment, that's including the material requested in paragraph 20.
Sure.
As long as we understand it.
I think I understand what you're aiming at, so it shouldn't be a problem.
It's almost like that. I think the SRB noted and approved the priority areas plan for the 20 stock assessment. Which would like to be presented at SRB 026. Okay.
While Olaf's saving, wondering, seems like during the stock assessment discussion, we revisited the idea of a multi-year stock assessment, tied it into the discussion around needing a robust FIS to fill in those years in between those multi-year assessments, plus had some discussion around what some of the things that could be done if we went to a multi-year stock assessment. And it seems like it's something that keeps coming up at SRB. The commissioners revisit it every once in a while. Not sure what sort of needs to happen to connect those, to either have a decision made or just to move it forward, as opposed to the sort of limbo discussion place that it seems to live.
Later in the report, we do comment because the MSE was showing that triennial assessments were almost a win-win option. There's really no reason not to adopt triennial assessments. I'm not sure if the
Okay.
comment in there, maybe we could say could be done.
Yeah, we can also recall a previous comment that we had, which actually listed those different things that the stock assessment team might work on. Was that in one of
It was a couple of years ago because I remember the commissioners asked me while I was standing there what they were blank. but there is a list. Yeah, somewhere.
One of our previous,
I mean, we could update that list because there are, we even mentioned a couple of specific things that could be. For example, now there are a few state-based models available. For example.
I'm looking for it right now. Can't remember which SRB it was.
Here, we can come back to this. It was probably 2 years ago. It wasn't last year. The year before
SRB
that, it was in
2021.
Victoria. So it was probably. So.
It was SRB 21. Oh, but as you're actually recalling paragraph 27 from SRB 20,
So Anne Marie's right on.
which was,
Yeah, keep coming up.
do you want me to read it just so you guys can hear it? The SRB noted
Sure.
that assessment research activities, paragraphs 23 to 26, are examples of work that could be done more extensively in non-assessment years within a multi-year assessment schedule. Other work could include investigating optimal subsampling designs for ages, sex ratio, and annual assessment methods to use within the MPs, as well as any of the several topics listed under stock assessment research. Well, yeah, we need to go to that paragraph.
I think that's when you might have been the year, the 5-year research plan. Because that was done in 22. In 21, we would have been commenting on that. So there's probably a big list in there. But it sounds like some of those things are out of date.
Is there that paragraph, Ian, in report, or did you say SRB 21?
I'm just back into 20, SRB 20. So the paragraphs 23 to 26 are examples of work that could be done more extensively in non-assessment years.
And just on process, did you recall those in the course of this meeting though, or are we just now in a trying to recall them up and see if we want to discuss maybe summary? We can pause and then do that.
There was a considerable amount of discussion about alternative models and improvement to the modeling framework, which I think is something that fit into this. So,
Yeah,
Why don't we pause on report adoption and deal with this?
I'm just looking back at this list that had things like bootstrapping and evaluation of MACE weighting criteria and things that we were working on right then. But I think our discussion this meeting was more in terms around alternate models, perhaps Bayesian model output, some broader topics than we were focused on at that several years ago.
What paragraph was that, sorry, Ian, from that report?
This is SRB 20, paragraph 27, which references paragraphs 23 through 26. Again, those are actually things that we were working on at the time. some of which have been largely, marine mammal interactions and evaluation of logbook data. We subsequently went on and did that.
Well, I mean, one thing we could do is kick it down the road and say to you guys, because if you're doing a full stock assessment this year, this might actually be a good time to revise research priorities for the stock assessment.
Yeah, that would be a natural part of the full stock assessment would be to outline future priorities, things that we couldn't get to in this assessment.
Okay, so
Bigger picture.
so let's say the SRB recalled SRB, oh, no. Let's say SRB recalled previous what paragraph? I don't know if I want to get that specific, but what I'm trying to say is like we could recall SRB 20 and 21 discussions of research, stock assessment research that could be done under a multi-year assessment schedule. And noted that several of those topics are either completed or out of date or no longer relevant. Request that a new set of research priorities for stock assessment be developed.
So, something like the SRB recalled previous discussions at SRB 20 and SRB 21 regarding whatever the full topic is, research priorities, stock assessment research priorities. One after that, sure.
And noted that several topics have either been completed or become less relevant or something.
Maybe we can stop for a second. I think the point here is employee benefits. It come from having a 3-year assessment timeline. That was my understanding of the reason for getting into this. If we're pointing out that, hey, the stock assessment team has been working through these things, given on one schedule.
Well, they haven't worked through all of it. I think what I'm trying to get at here is that before we say what the benefits are, what the research could be.
You say something about the shifting priorities.
Yeah, you could give a lot of, reasons for basically revising the research priorities. Yeah. Under schedule. That's all I'm trying to get at. I don't want to make it too specific.
Yeah, the point that seems to go kind of counter to that is the voting of some of these topics.
Yeah, partly because they were scaled such that they're doable in the current.
Sure. As is.
They were small topics. They were chosen to be small.
I get that, Sean.
Then we could say bigger topics, more impactful topics.
Yeah.
So we could say several of the smaller topics.
three that really stand out to me that are too big a bite for an annual assessment are, at least at the moment, moving to or adding a state space model, although that's conceivably possible even on a 1-year cycle. Bayesian models, more exploration of Bayesian models, and more work on spatially explicit models.
So what are you talking for? What do you mean for Bayesian models within stock synthesis?
Using whatever models we're using, but just trying to develop them out to the point where they are truly fully Bayesian models. I can see some benefit because we're trying to do things like risk tables. Defining probabilities using maximum likelihood is okay, but I think it might be. I would prefer to have fully Bayesian models talking about probability distributions.
So, but your current package doesn't give you that.
It does.
Oh, it does.
We would just have to do it and get it to the point where the problem with a 1-year cycle is that I've got like 9 business days to do the assessment. So a Bayesian model in an annual framework would have to be incredibly efficient and compact. And to get there from here is going to be a lot of work. On a 3-year cycle, it can be a model that's a little bit less, it takes a little longer to turn around.
Do you have sufficient computing clusters?
Yeah, the real trouble with these Bayesian models is that even with multiple chains, it's not sort of the computational increment that's expensive. It's the chain length. And even with multi-chains, it's going to be days of running time, which I just don't have on an annual cycle. Or weeks, yeah. It's just
That's the reason, like a different platform,
right.
it doesn't take days.
Exactly.
It's on the order of hours.
State space model may be far more efficient.
So how's this?
Yep.
What are spatially structured models beyond various slates?
Yeah,
Like movement models? Or?
yeah, you mentioned spatial models. I just wanted to-
We spent several years, I guess it's close to 10 years ago now, trying to develop a tactical spatially explicit model that actually modeled recruitment distribution and movement. And we ended up saying just not enough information for this to be a tactical model. Let's take this effort, and it eventually basically morphed into the basis for the operating model. But it's still conceivable that there is a spatial model with all of the tagging data that we've got and other sources of information. It's conceivable that we could have a fully spatial tactical model as well, but we just haven't been able to make it work yet.
You'd have to fix your the distribution parameters for an assessment step problem.
Yeah.
You have to do all your estimation conditional on a set of fixed movement and things like that.
That's where the
Wanna
major
take your time?
uncertainty. Not entirely easy.
It's not at all easy. We spent a solid 5 years trying to get one to put together that would be tactical and ready. And just didn't quite get there.
Even if
So we
you
don't, okay.
run the current model with Bayesian framework, instead of having point estimates to have a distribution, that would already be a big deal.
I think it would be preferable. Right now, we're using distributions, but we're using asymptotic approximations
Yeah.
based on the Hessian, which in some cases are fine, and in some cases they're not. They're an approximation. I think it would be preferable to have a full Bayesian posterior to do the kinds of risk calculations we're trying to do. I'm not convinced it's a big deal. We did, Cole Monahan and I did some work back in 2014 with one of the 4 models and did some comparisons between posteriors and the asymptotics, and it didn't look too bad at the time, but our first principles. Yeah.
But I think, yeah, going through the process of developing the Bayesian model, it is a good exercise to go through, and if there is something wrong, that'll tell you. Sometimes the MLE If the MLEs don't tell you things that Bayesian will about internal consistencies.
So might not converge.
That's step one. If it doesn't converge, then you've got problems. Could have problems. You don't really have convergence issues on your current one, right?
Not in an MLE context. I mean, I can imagine that when we convert them to Bayesian models, there would be some regularization of parameters, priors, and things that would make them far more efficient. But the exploration that we've done suggests that, not surprisingly, the way synthesis is configured, a lot of time-varying parameters and things don't integrate well during Bayesian analysis, and so you can run them for a month to get and sample every 100,000th draw of the chain, or you can regularize a little bit and make that more efficient. That's where, I think this idea of also exploring state space models, I can imagine a state space model is going to have a lot of this functionality and also converge much quicker because it's actually set up to do this thing.
The real round.
Exactly.
These are maximum likelihood step. It makes your maximum likelihood step. Right. State space random effects one. Like you can't use random effects in Bayesian. You kind of get the same end result.
Well, if the random effects are doing what they're supposed to be doing and the Laplace approximation is good, then they should be roughly equivalent to the posterior for those.
Right. So it makes your MLE method better. Right. You can, if you skip the MLE method, go straight to the Bayesian one, it will get the same thing.
Perhaps. I guess my sense is that these models that are set up for random effects from the beginning tend to integrate better than models that are really designed around a maximum likelihood estimation framework.
Go more smoothly.
Little things like estimating random effects directly rather than doing random walk offsets, which are now all correlated with each other over the time series instead of having less correlation. They're actually treated as independent random effects. A lot of benefit to be had there. But I think these are three great examples of things that I'm unlikely to make a lot of progress on a tight annual schedule. At least in the short term. I mean, we're certainly going to be working on this stuff, but it's a lot harder to make progress on these kinds of large issues than some of the things we had listed in the past, like further exploration of brain mammal depredation and strapping the sample sizes. That I can fit into a 3-year cycle.
At least the first time, you need a good 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
If you were to develop a full random effects or Bayesian model.
And then the Bayesian model, it really also depends on how long we have to conduct the assessment. So this really tight schedule. We need to see this all over. There are lots of people who have investigated Bayesian models, but most production stock assessments aren't using Bayesian models because it's really hard to go through to only have a week or two with the data and produce a finished model and also have integrated posteriors in the process.
Most assessments are also not on the site.
It's true. It's pretty tight. Yeah. It's pretty
Oh,
tight.
that stuff's good. I didn't know we had some.
I think some of that pressure is off when you go to a 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
So I want to have a request in here. Just to where you say addressing, just make that the request.
So, so the start of the paragraph should just say recalling previous discussions. So get rid of SRB recall, say recalling. So get rid of the SRB. So it's just recalling previous discussions at SRB 2021 regarding stock assessment research priorities, and it's several, so get rid of the noted. because otherwise it's going to have too many verbs in there. And then several comma at the end of that sentence was addressed, so comma, the SRB requested.
Requested
Oh, that.
Stamina or
requested a update to the larger topics. Larger topics. Okay. On here, 23. 24.
I just thought the word estimated. 24. Estimated spontaneous stockpile mass.
So yeah, from now on, there's a couple of comments and additional edits suggested by us, so we can. Estimated then.
Yeah. Five. So this was, going through the discussion we had at the time. Kind of trying to address the original question from Canadian commissioners, as stated by Anne Marie, asking about how to make the MSE and things robust to the current way the decisions are made. That's what the decision variability is there. Could maybe
The discussion was around worst case productivity.
actually it would be good to put in there worst case productivity.
Want to note the paragraph above. Noting the paragraph. The title of the paragraph, that would be good.
Just get rid of the SRB notice. Okay, well, let's see with that. Leave it. 6. No.
Question about 26 and the word integrating. Um, I don't know if the commissioner's request was to like really integrate it or more, it was more put it in the context of it sounded like.
I think by
So I,
integrating there, we're kind of saying that not to run the MSE in parallel to the assessment every year.
okay.
Is that clear?
And the annual. Yes, thank you. But in terms of run the MSE once every 5-6 years, here's the context in terms of the long-term management procedure. So it would be essentially be the same table for context that they would look at every single year in terms of the MSE with the annual risk tables that would change. Is that like there's no concern about that type of use of MSE?
Yeah, I think if you,
Okay.
so for example, if you, let's say they adopted a procedure of some kind and there was supporting information behind that, say a table of outputs under that procedure. So the table might include expected performance under this procedure, projected catches under this procedure, including for the coming year, situations, exceptional circumstance triggers that would occur, these things. An information table like that would definitely be useful. I was saying earlier, you could even have in your assessment could run projections of what your management procedure is going to say in the future, in the next couple of years, to give people a bit of, forward guidance so they get some future context in the decision that they're making, in addition to the straight assessment output. So there are ways to do it. Yeah, what this is saying is, don't have Alan running management procedures SPRs at the same time every year, considering a different one. And that also doesn't mean you only run that, you only open your MSE every third or fifth year, right? You can be answering all kinds of other questions
Yes.
in the meantime.
Great, thank you. That helps. Actually, in terms of 25, there was also a question in terms of not only the operating model, but also like, are there ways that we can make maybe the objectives, the way that they're stated, like just all the moving parts of the of what's included in the MSE? Like, are there any suggested changes to the way that we've been approaching things because it's now clear how the intended end use is?
Yeah, certainly anything that's probabilistic becomes difficult. Because if you're going with worst case scenarios, then you're kind of ignoring the uncertainty. Like you are ignoring the uncertainty. Yeah, I don't know. That might be getting down into the weeds. How objectives are.
Yeah, not necessarily a right now thing. It's more of a things to think about. Thank you.
I'm not sure how clear this using MSE. We're kind of getting into defining MSE as a simulation, whereas it's a bigger thing than just a simulation. So See if we can get away with it. So where are we? 27 did, 28.
I put a comment there, and I just want to verify the language here and how it relates to slide 19. I didn't quite understand part that's shaded by the comment. And
Should we try to bring up slide 19?
it might be useful. So what it's saying there is less decision variability associated with the 15% constraint results in higher average yield than procedures that allow random variability up to approximately 25%. I'm not sure that was the case.
I just have to stop sharing.
I didn't look up that slide. I wrote that and I didn't look up the slide, but I was guessing that's why it says approximately.
Okay. Yeah, because what this slide shows, so decision-making variability are the two left with no decision-making variability and yes on the two right. And then what you could see with the constraint, the yield is always lower. But I think the discussion we had was that with decision-making variability, the constraint had resulted in even lower than without decision-making variability. So the decision, I think this is getting at the asymmetric cost of this. And so I'm wondering if that
So under decision-making variability, yes. Constraint, none. You get 24% AAV.
Yeah.
That's what the approximately 25%
Yeah.
is aiming at. And median TCUI of 60.
right.
And you have decision-making variability and the constraint, get lower variability, but you also get lower
Yield.
yield.
I don't think the paragraph says that.
Doesn't say that.
No, because it says less decision variability associated with the constraint. So that would be the second column, no 15. Results in higher average yield than procedures that allow random variability up to approximately 25%, which I'm guessing is the third column. But that's not quite right. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to compare the two constraints or exactly what.
The comment is, yeah, the constraint, I think, is in the way good to compare decision-making variability versus not.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see what the paragraph says.
And what without the constraint, the yield increases with decision-making variability, but the variability increases as well. With the constraint, the yield decreases with decision-making variability. And the interannual variability increases as well.
on table right next to it, but we could get rid of that, allow random variability up to 25%, just so the point being that less decision variability associated with 15% TCY constraint alone results in higher average procedures that combine that constraint decision variability.
Yes. Right. Or you could say, yeah,
And get rid of the rest of the sentence. They're all that's actually not what that is. It's 25%, which is not necessarily all
Right.
decision.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I get the gist of the comment. Just wanted to make sure it was correct.
Thanks for clarifying.
On 29, and given the discussion that we had this morning as well, I was wondering if the SRB might be willing to elevate this paragraph to agreed, which is level 2, and accepted as the level 1. So accepted would actually put it in front of the commissioners, which I think this is a pretty important concept for them to hear, especially given the paragraph we added this morning on the stock assessment. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'll put it in front of the commissioners more clearly in that context.
Back to paragraph 2, where I'll spell it out more.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thanks.
30. I'm not sure about what this one is saying, but didn't we have a discussion about optimizing? I remember that being
So 30 is about adding a new exceptional circumstance related to catch, which you also mentioned in a previous paragraph. So I think this one's useful. And I don't see anything about optimizing yield.
I'm talking about, oh, sorry, I meant 31.
Oh, okay, yeah. This is the concept of that B36. Placing it with an absolute biomass objective. If you wanted to bring in the optimizing yield discussion, you could simply recall the paragraph from SRB025 that suggested redefining optimizing yield as A, and then B was considering this objective that you stated in 31. I can read that paragraph if you want. Are you interested in hearing that paragraph from SRB 24? No worries.
I can remember it.
Sorry, it's gonna find it. Oh, it's not quite what I remember.
I think the point was everything has been tied to the MSY proxy SPR. And look at the reality of fishing under a SPR, 36% or 38%. It's pretty grim. CPUE. CPUE is related to absolute spawning biomass, not relative. So that's what we're getting at here.
You
see that?
I want to go
Right. Exactly. Yeah, because that's what we talked about. Yeah, that's what this is getting at.
clarify that. So do we need to recall this other paragraph? Or are we good?
Yeah, it's actually not paragraph 24 from SRB 024. I don't think you need to recall it. It's not quite exactly how
Notice one recommendation is missing here. Getting rid of the overfished thing.
Yeah, we had that.
Did I never say that to you?
I didn't go
Let's discuss that. I was like, hold on. I think maybe we just talked about it.
We talked about it.
Well, what I intended to write was to recommend coming up with a different definition to represent the minimum biomass it was threshold or overfished. I was suggesting calling it depleted. Anna was poking around in the FAO literature and stuff, and that uses the more traditional definition of overfished and overfishing.
Whereas my perspective is that what Alan has done matches really well with the US system, so it's perfect.
What if there was
The Canadians are not.
what if the request was a request for to examine the definitions of overfished and depleted in the U.S. and Canadian fisheries management systems, and then I'll just go in and I'll try to pull out from Canada's Fisheries Act and precautionary principles of U.S. Magnus and Stevens Act, what those definitions are.
In the Canadian context, it might not be easy to find out one single.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you will. I don't
In
think you'll
Canada.
find anything to do with overfishing and overfishing in Canada.
Right, but I think that'll be useful to find out what, if they have anything analogous to when a rebuilding plan is implemented or anything like that.
It'll be critical. What you're pointing to there is called critical. That's the whole idea of the limit reference point in Canada, which is 90% of what they worry about.
And then would it be helpful then if we did that and then brought back those definitions, maybe also looked at some other RFMOs and what their definitions are and how that would relate to us defining a rebuilding threshold. Or
Yeah.
something like that.
Like in Canada, like the new Fisheries Act specifically about like there's a line that has two conditions around that, and it's about the limit reference point and what triggers are, if you're below it, you trigger a rebuilding plan that brings the stock to whatever sustainable.
Maybe a
The
little
idea is that it's-
table that kind of summarizes
Okay.
different thresholds and
I mean, the Europeans have got all kinds of things around BLIMs. If you just look up BLIM for all the European and RFMOs, you'll see what they're calling it.
Right.
What they're calling the state. You could call it BLIM too. Oh, the point, whatever you want, but the state of it. And it's critical, you're calling it overfished. So,
status.
well, stock. Yeah, so you're coming up with status definition, which is description of the state.
Yeah, would this be better as a request?
Oh,
Being something that's.
I would love to look at the
Yeah.
adopting a home strategy policy at the annual meeting. This might delay it.
might delay it.
And I'm glad we removed the just referencing US and Canada, because we should be looking for all the international.
Maybe then you could end. Yeah, just by.
Maybe that the status is public.
That's all Canada uses.
Yeah.
There's no reference to overfishing. Okay. Three.
The report check had a lot to say about this.
Yeah.
Principles.
In what sense?
Usually just impose him. Get it to the end. That's right. Otherwise, the number goes haywire.
Okay. 33 and a half.
Looks good to me.
34.
One recommendation there that toward the end where it says fish regional WPE, I think it'd be more consistent to say fish regional abundance estimates. Just be since we had in that last meeting, we had that brief discussion about density versus abundance weighting. And I think what you're recommending here is that we go ahead and do what the approach we've been doing, which is to abundance weight, but we extend that to the years where we have that information.
Exactly.
I think just the WPE is confusing it.
Yeah, and it actually comes in further down comments,
Yeah.
but it's good to make it consistent.
Yeah, and then we also added the GAM there because I think we would like to move forward with a specific type of model type.
Again, it's clearly better
Yeah.
than just a creation.
Maybe we have a second. Did you have a thought on the sensitivity I did? I actually truncated the GAM at the youngest age that we'd observed mature fish.
I like that.
It seems reasonable. What I'm worried about is that if we have model created mature fish for which we've never observed a mature fish at that age, it seems like a dangerous thing because
I agree.
even if it's only a few percent, there's going to be a lot of fish in that age tag. So I don't know if you need to put that in here or not, but it's just nice to know if you guys are comfortable with the approach we're taking there.
I would always be cautious with them.
It's actually better with the GAM than it is with the GLIM.
Yeah.
There's less truncation, but in
Yeah.
both cases, we have a little bit of a
Still-
tail there.
Okay, 35.
The A50 value there, that's referencing the coastwide ogive. Is that correct?
Yeah, what Colin presented this yesterday was on the difference in A50 between 2022 and 2023 in biological region 2. Biological region 3 showed exactly the same. But what he didn't show, what he showed yesterday also was coastwide with the combined 2022 and 2023, right? A50 was 10.3 years. When he presented that same analysis in June, based only on the 2022, the coastwide was 11.3. So it was just clarifying whether you're actually referring to the coastwide ogive or the specifically for biological regions, region 2 between
Well, the
2022 and 2023.
regions showed pretty much the same trend, not necessarily the magnitude, but the decrease could be seen across the regions.
A50 decreased both for region 2 and at the coastwide level between
Yeah.
2022 and 23. Yeah.
Well, the deduction in the region 2 is what drove the
Right.
reduction in the coastwide. That's
Yep. Keep coastwide or not?
Yeah, no, the SRB noted a
Struck
decrease in the coastwide A50 driven largely by changes in biological region 2.
Yeah.
Do you understand the recommendation 35P?
I do understand that. That's going to be a little difficult. I mean, not every sample I'm going to be able to determine whether it's a first time spawner or a previous spawner. I could do it. I have to look. I have to take a look, but it's not something that is going to be determined. I'm not going to be able to determine that for every sample. It's just not feasible.
Even a subsample would give an
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Something.
And I'm not sure you were here, but we were discussing whether an AI could.
It's actually something that Joseph and I've had brief discussions on is whether AI modeling could. Yeah.
Okay. 6. Seven. Recommending a preliminary evaluation or requesting? It's recommended. It's It gives some time.
Say that again.
Can you scroll back up for a second? 2036.
It's not an easy task.
Yeah, probably recommend.
Request would be recommended. It's something the commission will review. It's just something you want us to work through. Yeah, okay.
I want to check it out. See if it-
Yeah, no, I think the message is clear. I mean, we will start doing a literature review and evaluating, how that is a feasible approach, for species, such as Pacific halibut, which there's already genetic information, in-depth genetic information, and then there's additional potential markers for substructure, such as parasites.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll look
it has been shown in some cases to be preferable to using the genetics of the fish as a structure.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you've already done lots of genetics on halibut. Right. This is not.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely look.
38. Forty. Scroll up a bit. Oh.
Some clarification there quickly on 42, what who you're requesting it to. The commission would be the commissioners.
I guess if it was, I didn't really know what point this at. If it was a request, then it would be just, you could just delete that. Requested a strategic analysis of potential alternative approaches. Just delete that.
And change it to.
I think this is probably better though, given what you just recommended. This is where consider and adopt or not, right? Commission.
Yeah, so if you want the commission to,
That's what,
that's leave as recommended.
I was wondering here, I was thinking about this last night, and I'm not certain exactly how the MSE would do a real, would be used to determine the costs of the survey. Because I think, and I haven't been involved with how the survey costs are projected when they determine the deficit or whatever. I've managed to stay away from that analysis, but that, as I understand it, is a complicated analysis that takes this charter regions, these small survey regions, into account and what the catch rates potentially are in each of these smaller regions, which are finer than the regulatory areas. And then when the cost is calculated, it's optimizing in these charter regions. And Ray talked about it yesterday or the other day, where he said, well, if this 3A and 3B charter regions are the most cost-effective charter regions. It'd be better to have other ones, but that's going to increase the deficit. So the MSE is really able to provide projections at the region level. We can make assumptions and go down to reg area level, more assumptions to go to a charter region level. But I just want to make sure that I'm clear on how the SRB is seeing the MSE as the tool, potential tool to do this.
Yeah, I think we saw the calculation that you did showing that it's about 500K.
Yeah.
Per year in the long term cost for having a lower survey decision. And thought that, wow, that's a really useful calculation. I wonder if you could also use it to generate survey costs based on the fact that survey costs are linked to weapons.
Right.
The MSC gives you that subscale estimates on weapons for different procedures.
Would it, just wondering, would the SRB be opposed to the Secretariat potentially bringing back the best tool to answer this question? And so maybe in particular, could that be changed to, for example?
I was just gonna say, just change it to words.
Okay. I just didn't want to be tied to having to do this with the MSE tool if we find that there's a better tool.
I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to make some assumptions.
Yeah.
And all we're really looking at is like, you're not looking for the down to the $10 level here. It's like, how many millions are there? Is it in the millions? And so maybe you have to make assumptions about how charter region catchability is related to region level.
Yeah, and so we may do something where we use MSE output to feed into something else, or maybe we just put it all right into the MSE.
The benefit of the MSC is getting feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. See that for
And
sure.
management procedures that result in major reductions in stock size also result in higher costs than survey because the survey savings.
Yeah.
Just tying those pieces together.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds fun. You okay with that, Ian?
Yeah, my first impression is just this can be tough, as we talked
Yes.
about. It's not a pencil sharpening exercise. Our ability to predict the survey costs next year are already plus or minus $1 million. 5 years from now, it's going to be, who knows? We could be $3 million in the red or in the black because of price and catch rates and other expenses and things. So it's going to be pretty.
Yeah.
Might be a lot of hand waving in this process, but that doesn't mean we can't do it.
What we could do is change strategic to preliminary. Then we can see what parts of it.
I think that'd be helpful, and it would be more clear to the commission that this is something being investigated to see if it's a useful way forward.
Essentially, we really like the value type analyses. I think that's a really useful tool. And if there are ways of expanding that, excited to see.
Economists do it all the time.
They can.
I can see some of it, it's like, wow, you make a lot of assumptions there.
It depends what question you wanna ask,
Sure.
right? It's like,
That's big
what-
questions.
if you wanna just get the general direction, it might not be accurate from in the short term.
Just trying to get some ballpark. And then you can say, okay, is there other ways to use this money that may make our lives easier in the future? 3. 4. 5. That's it. 46, 47.
So there was one business item that we discussed briefly in the meeting dates. Did you have a chance to think about SRB 26, the 10th to the 12th of June, 2025? Okay. And then tentatively SRB 27, the 23rd to the 25th of September. And I left the word tentatively there, so it gives us some scope to move around. If something else pops up in your schedules.
But the June would be 10th.
At the moment, just leave it as tentatively for the 23rd to the 25th of September. Yeah. We'll just add that in as a paragraph for you. Order go. 23rd to the 25th. So just put that as tentative at the moment. We can work on that.
Motion to adopt the report.
Right, we're done. Thank you very much. So we'll finalize that within an hour or so. I don't think it'd be too hard. We can get it published this afternoon. Thank you very much. We'll close out the meeting. Thanks to those online.